Do you want to know how to teach a child with oppositional defiant disorder? That can be a tricky one, but I've had experience with that and I'd like to help. I'm Nicholeen Peck and I teach all over the world about parenting, good communication, how to build strong family bonds, child development, and relationship development through the lens of the principle self-government. And in this video, we are talking about teaching a child with oppositional defiant disorder. I think there are a lot of people that think that their oppositional child or their defiant child may have oppositional defiant disorder. Now, just so you know, there are a lot of criteria that a person has to meet in order to actually have oppositional defiant disorder. But whether your child has oppositional defiant disorder or you just think that they might have oppositional defiant disorder, this video ought to be helpful. Also, if you are a teacher of a child who's oppositional defiant or a parent, the principles and skills that I talk about here should be of benefit to you. So let me tell you a little bit about my background. So I'm a grandma now and have multiple grandchildren, but I raised 4 children of my own, as well as many therapeutic treatment care foster children. So for many years, I was a therapeutic treatment care foster parent, and I would take in troubled children into my home and would try to help them learn self-government and self-regulation. Now, as you know, if you have any understanding of oppositional defiant disorder, self-regulation can be a bit of a struggle if you have oppositional defiant disorder, because you're so impulsive. Usually you have this fast track to the back brain. Usually you want to push just for the sake of pushing, which means that a lot of things have to be presented to that child as their decision. It's very important that you don't try to force too hard a person with oppositional defiant disorder. They don't respond well to that. But should they just be allowed to railroad everything that happens in your home and in your school classroom? Absolutely not. You have to maintain command and authority over the classroom or the home environment wherever you happen to be. You have to be confident in the skills that you've taught them and everybody else around you, and the skills that you have. If you're flying by the seat of your pants, you're more likely to get trapped in a power struggle with that oppositional defiant child. People with oppositional defiant disorder like to power struggle. I mean, in a way, almost everybody likes to power struggle, because then they get this false feeling of power. You know, they feel like they've done something to the other person to get them so worked up. One of the most important things that you can do is not show them that the power struggle is working. It absolutely must be seen that they are having a power struggle with themselves, not a power struggle with you. And at some point when it's not the moment where you are trying to correct them, teach them, or get them to be calm and regulated, you probably need to have a conversation about how they have a choice, how they can choose whether they want to battle or not. But really, the battle is just with themselves, because you are not going to battle them. You are going to have a structure in place that will hold them and you accountable, and you are going to stick within that structure. Once you have the structure in place and you tell them that you are going to stick within the skills and principles of that structure, that makes it so there's nothing to battle against anymore except for themselves. They can try to battle the structure, and an oppositional defiant child will attempt that for a little while. But really, in the end, they recognize if you are staying consistent with the structure that you tell them that you are doing, then they are really just fighting themselves, their own impulses, their own emotions. And ultimately, they end up finding themselves making different choices, because if you don't feel like you're bothered by the decision that they make, but you're just going to carry on, then they didn't win anything. Nothing amazing happened in that power struggle that showed them that they had any power, except for maybe an endorphin release or something like that. But other than that, they really got nothing out of it. So sometimes what you have to do is help them see how they can be successful in conquering themselves, so that then they will move in that direction on their own more often. The one thing about people who are oppositional defiant is that sometimes they actually will follow your instructions and do the things that you want them to do if they see that there's enough truth in it. Now, a truly oppositional defiant person will defy everyone, everything, pretty much all the time. But there is this little moment where they go, wait a minute, that's actually probably true. I agree with that. And that defies what other people think. So I think I'm going to go that way too. So they sometimes will follow people if that person seems like they're enough against the grain. Then they might think it's a good idea. Regardless of if your oppositional defiant child actually decides to love obeying or not, it is a social responsibility to teach them how to work with other people, solve problems and not contention, and be able to follow instructions from someone in authority. Otherwise, you'll actually set them up for a really hard life of bad relationships, bad work environments. They have to learn how to adapt, and you have to try your best, even though it can be very difficult for them. For many years, I took in troubled teens, like I mentioned before, and many of those teens had ODD. They also oftentimes had ADHD and ODD combined together. That can be a very difficult combination because they are now very impulsive, they have higher levels of anxiety, and they're more emotional, and they are going to push back against almost everything. That can be very difficult. But what I did in my home proved to be very effective. This isn't to say that there was some magic light switch for a person with ODD. It can take time. I'm going to tell you that right up front. You've got to make sure that you know your stuff and that you have a plan. I planned to the point where I wrote down the words that I wanted to say in an interaction. I told the youth in my home, these are the words I'm going to be saying when I correct you. These are the words I'm going to be saying when I praise you. These are the words I'm going to be saying when you go completely out of control and you need help with regulation. And I'm going to say them the same every time. And at first I had to keep them in my pocket and pull them out and read them off of a card. I actually, if you've been on my website, the teachingselfgovernment.com website, actually have cue cards now that people use to help them remember some of the things that they've learned in the training. Some of them you can't really use 100% without the training because you need to have the full skill to understand what it's cueing you to. But those are some of the cues that I used when I was planning out exactly what I was going to do with these foster children. So anyway, I would stick straight to it, the same every single time. And that predictability made it very clear that I wasn't manipulating anyone. I was just sticking to a structure, and that they were going to have to choose what to do with that structure at any given moment. And if they chose to push against it, I would say that's okay, which kind of drove them crazy because they're trying to make me mad. But I would say, that's okay. It's your choice. I can help you with this. We can do the rule of three. We can work through this correction. No big deal. You get to choose. If this is your choice, that's fine. Now I'm telling them they're making a choice, and their choice is something that is possibly making their life inconvenient, maybe even hurting them a little bit. Now, a truly oppositional defiant person will sometimes make a choice that even hurts them just to prove a point to you. But what if it doesn't really prove any point to you? Then they have to ask themselves if it's really worth it. Even a person with oppositional defiant disorder has a choice. In fact, they're very aware of their choice. They exercise it all the time. What they need to do is decide to make a choice that actually benefits them. And they can do it. I've seen it time and time again. One of the reasons that I'm standing here on this channel, and I've written the books I have, and that people have made the documentaries and programs about my family, is because those types of youth came to my home and we were able to help them choose to have different outcomes in their lives and in their relationships. And they ended up becoming so much more happy. People noticed and wanted to know how it was done. The whole teaching self-government system is based on the concept and principle of self-government, and based on the idea that every person does get a choice. There's no force, there's no intimidation, there's no fear. There's just people living their roles, understanding the same skills, and following through. That is what it means to be truly self-governed. When your child has oppositional defiant disorder, you need to know what to do when they go completely out of control. That's important because that's going to happen quite a bit, especially at first, because a child with oppositional defiant disorder has to test and has to push a lot more in order to finally decide, no, that's not the way I want to go. It doesn't seem to be working out the way I intended. They like to try things out by trial and error, which means they do make lots of mistakes, which will require more patience for you. But it is possible to maintain consistency and get them to a point where they can make a better choice. The type of intensive teaching that I use for youth who are oppositional defiant is something that I call the rule of three. The rule of three is a way to point them toward calmness. Understanding calmness is probably one of the most important things that you can teach somebody who has ODD. Recently, I was with a family who had multiple children, and we were talking with them about their behaviors, training them about self-government and the skills of self-government. Some of their youth actually had oppositional defiant disorder, but by the end of the training were saying to me, you know what, this is good. I think I'm going to use it. And their mother and father even said, who I think were a little oppositional themselves, said, you know what, this is worth it. This is worth it to do this. Even though I don't like having to restrict myself, it's worth it to do this to help them learn how to battle themselves and win. They really found a lot of success, and a lot of the extreme behaviors have now tapered off because they've put self-government into practice in their home. Calmness for the parent is really important. If you've been used to battling your oppositional defiant youth, that has to stop because you're teaching them to continue the battle. If you want to take a step toward calmness, then I have something for you. In the description attached to this video, there is a link that says teachselfgov.com/toolkit. If you click on that link right now, you can have the Calm Parenting Toolkit for free. That is a 10-lesson toolkit. It's not a full course in teaching self-government, but it is a great toolkit to get you started on your calmness so that you can get rid of the power struggles to start things out. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.